The crate arrived at Wright Field, Ohio, at 3:12 a.m. on a wet October morning in 1944. No markings, no paperwork, just a burned wooden panel wrapped in oilcloth, carried by two military policemen who did not speak to anyone on the tarmac. The air smelled like rain and aviation fuel. The war felt far away here, but only on the surface. Captain Elias Warren stood alone under a single floodlight, collar turned up, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. He was 32 years old, a civilian engineer wearing a uniform because the war had decided he belonged in one. He had never fired a weapon in anger. He had, however, designed materials that decided whether aircraft came home or didn't. When the MPs set the crate down, one of them slid a folded note across the lid. From Berlin. The note said, "Recovered indirectly. Treat as live ordnance." Intellectually, Elias frowned. That phrase again. He had heard it twice before. Always when someone didn't know how to explain fear. Inside the crate was a section of aircraft fuselage. Burned, splintered, wooden. Not American wood. Not German, either. Elias reached out, fingers hovering just above the surface. He didn't touch it yet. He already knew what it was. The Mosquito. And if this piece had really come from Berlin, then something extraordinary had happened on the other side of the war. 6 weeks earlier, in a factory basement outside Hamburg, 3 German engineers stood in silence. The Mosquito lay before them like a corpse that refused to obey physics. Half wood, half shadow, its shape elegant even in dissection. Panels removed, joints exposed. Adhesive seams visible where metal fasteners should have been. Dr. Otto Klein, head of Luftwaffe Materials Research, broke the silence. "This should not survive flak," he said quietly. He ran his fingers along the joint where wing met fuselage. No rivets, no welds, just glue. Perfectly smooth, perfectly fused. They had shot this aircraft down 2 nights earlier over Bremen. Or they thought they had. It had limped away trailing smoke, vanished into cloud, and crashed on a riverbank 70 miles east, far beyond where any bomber made sense. When they found it, the crew was gone. No bodies, no blood, just footprints leading into trees. But the aircraft itself was intact enough to study. Klein tapped the joint with a steel probe. "The wood did not crack. This is not carpentry," he said. "This is chemistry." One of the younger engineers swallowed. "Sir, if this is wood, and it's faster than our fighters." Klein did not answer. He did not need to. Because what he was thinking, what none of them wanted to say out loud, was this: if wood could beat steel, then German engineering supremacy was already dead. Captain Elias Warren had grown up in Kansas, where wood meant barns, not bombers. His father had built furniture during the Depression, salvaging broken pieces and turning them into something useful. Elias learned early that materials mattered, but ideas mattered more. You could build strength where none was supposed to exist. When the war came, Elias was pulled into a quiet program under the Army Air Forces. His job was simple on paper: study enemy technology, predict enemy adaptation, prevent surprises. But the Mosquito had been a surprise. It was British, yes, but it terrified American planners just as much as it impressed them. A wooden aircraft that outran fighters, carried bombs, dodged radar, and returned home again and again. The question was not how it worked. The question was what it meant. When the burned panel arrived at Wright Field, Elias knew the Germans had finally asked that same question. And worse, they might be close to answering it. The panel was laid out in a secured hangar, lights adjusted, guards posted. No photographs allowed. Elias worked alone. He shaved thin samples from the adhesive seam, examined them under magnification, ran chemical tests until dawn bled into morning. It was not just glue. It was an engineered bond, designed to flex, absorb shock, distribute stress. The wood fibers were oriented deliberately, layered with mathematical precision. This was not a workaround for metal shortages. This was an entirely different philosophy of flight. At 6:40 a.m., Elias sat back, eyes burning, hands trembling. If the Germans had this panel, they had already seen the truth, and if they understood the truth, they would try to replicate it. Not with wood, but with something worse. 3 days later, Elias was summoned to Washington. The briefing room was small. No windows. 1 general, 2 colonels, a man from the Office of Strategic Services who did not give his name. On the table lay a thin folder. On the cover, 1 word: Mosquito. The general spoke first. "Captain Warren, we believe German engineers have recovered and studied a British Mosquito. We believe they have drawn the correct conclusions." Elias nodded slowly. They'll stop trying to outbuild us, he said. They'll start trying to outthink us. The OS man leaned forward. They already are. He slid a photograph across the table, a blurred aerial image of a facility in Saxony. Long buildings, heavy power draw. No aircraft production signatures. This is not a factory, the man said. This is a laboratory. Elias felt a cold knot settle in his stomach. They're not copying the plane, Elias said. They're copying the idea, the general exhaled. And if they succeed, Elias didn't hesitate, then every assumption we have about air superiority collapses. The mission that followed did not involve bombs. It involved paper. Elias was embedded with an OS team tasked with an unusual objective. Not sabotage. Not assassination. Misinformation. If German engineers were studying the Mosquito, then the most dangerous thing was not what they knew. It was what they might conclude next. The plan was audacious, risky, almost absurd. Feed German intelligence a partial truth. Let them believe the Mosquito's strength came from scarcity, from British desperation, from a unique combination of materials impossible to replicate. Let them chase the wrong answer. Elias hated it. Engineers respected truth. Lies had consequences. But war did not care. In Zurich, neutral ground crackling with spies. An American courier met a German intermediary in a cafe that smelled of smoke and old wood. The documents exchanged were real, authentic, carefully incomplete. They described adhesives that required British climate conditions, wood species that grew only in specific regions, processes that relied on civilian craftsmanship Germany no longer possessed. It was convincing. Too convincing. Elias watched from across the street, heart pounding, as the courier walked away. If the Germans swallowed this, they would waste months, maybe longer, if they didn't. Elias did not finish that thought. Back in Hamburg, Dr. Otto Klein read the documents in silence. He did not trust them. He trusted the Mosquito more. He returned to the wreckage, ran new tests, applied stress in ways no one had thought to try, and then he saw it. The adhesive did not just bind wood. It redistributed energy. Klein's breath caught. This was not about materials. This was about systems. The Mosquito was fast because it was light. It was strong because it did not fight forces head-on. It bent, absorbed, redirected. It behaved like a living thing. Klein closed his eyes. Germany could build this. Not with wood, but with composites. If only he had time. Time was running out everywhere. By early 1945, American bombers were crossing the Rhine. Factories burned, rail lines shattered. But in Saxony, the laboratory still worked. Elias received fragmentary reports, increased power consumption, unusual material shipments, engineers disappearing into secrecy. He slept poorly, ate little. One night, staring at the Mosquito panel back in Ohio, he understood something that chilled him. Even if Germany failed, the idea would not die. Wood-beating steel was only the beginning. After the war, someone else would try this, and they would succeed. The final OS operation was launched in March 1945. A small team parachuted into Germany with one goal: destroy the laboratory. Elias did not go. He watched from maps and reports and static-filled radio transmissions. The team made it inside. They planted charges. They were discovered. What happened next never made headlines. The building was destroyed, the research lost. But one engineer escaped. Dr. Otto Klein. Klein vanished into the chaos of defeat. No body, no trial. Years later, American aerospace researchers would encounter ideas that seemed to appear from nowhere. Composite structures, energy-dispersing bonds, philosophies of design that echoed the Mosquito's ghost. Elias Warren left the service quietly in 1946. He returned to civilian research, said little about the war, but sometimes, in lectures, he would hold up a piece of wood and say, simply, "Strength is not what you think it is." The Mosquito never belonged to one nation. It belonged to an idea. That speed could come from simplicity. That survival could come from humility. That the future might not be forged, but grown. German engineers learned that too late. America learned it just in time, and the rest of the world would spend decades catching up. Because the most dangerous weapons of war are not bombs or planes or armies. They are the moments when someone realizes the rules were wrong all along and decides to change them. The idea that would not die. 3 days later, Elias Warren was summoned to Washington. The building had no windows. The air felt recycled, stale with urgency. A single table filled the room. One general, 2 colonels, and a man from the Office of Strategic Services who did not introduce himself, because names were liabilities now. On the table lay a thin folder, Mosquito. The general opened it slowly, as if the word itself might react. Captain Warren, he said, German engineers have recovered a British Mosquito. They have studied it, and we believe they've understood it. Elias did not react. He had already reached that conclusion weeks ago. They'll stop trying to outbuild us, Elias said quietly. They'll start trying to outthink us. The OSS man leaned forward and slid a photograph across the table. A blurred aerial image. Long industrial buildings hidden among trees in Saxony. No aircraft on runways, no factory smoke. Just power lines. Heavy ones. This isn't production, the man said. It's research. Elias stared at the image. They're not copying the aircraft, he said. They're copying the philosophy. The general rubbed his temples. And if they succeed, Elias didn't pause. Then every rule of air combat changes overnight. The mission that followed didn't involve bombs or bullets. It involved paper. Elias was embedded with an OSS misinformation unit. Their task wasn't to destroy German research. Not yet. Their task was to poison it. If German engineers were asking the right questions, then America needed them chasing the wrong answers. The plan bordered on madness. They would leak technical truths, real data, but with the most important pieces subtly missing. They would let Germany believe the Mosquito's strength came from British desperation, from rare woods, from climate, from craftsmanship no longer possible under bombing and shortages. They would turn brilliance into a dead end. Elias hated the idea. Engineers respected truth. Lies had long shadows. But war had no respect for engineers. Zurich, neutral and dangerous, became the stage. In a quiet cafe filled with smoke and old wood, an American courier met a German intermediary, two men, pretending to be nothing while everything depended on them. The exchange lasted seconds. Folders slid across a table. Fingers never touched. From across the street, Elias watched through rain-specked glass, his heart beating too fast. The documents were convincing, too convincing. If Germany believed them, months would be lost. If they didn't, Elias forced himself to look away. Back in Hamburg, Dr. Otto Klein read the documents alone. He did not trust them. Paper lied. Aircraft did not. Klein returned to the Mosquito wreckage. He ignored the documents and began again from first principles. He stressed the joints, twisted them, shocked them, and then he saw it. The adhesive did more than hold wood together. It spread force. Energy that should have shattered the airframe flowed outward, dissipating harmlessly. Klein felt his breath catch. This was not a material breakthrough. This was a systems breakthrough. The Mosquito didn't fight physics. It cooperated with it. Germany could build this. Not with wood. But with composites. Klein closed his eyes. If only there were time. There wasn't. By early 1945, the war accelerated toward collapse. American bombers crossed the Rhine. Cities burned. Railways vanished overnight. Yet in Saxony, the laboratory still worked. Elias received fragments, power spikes, unusual shipments, engineers disappearing into classified programs. He slept little, ate less. One night at Wright Field, staring at the Mosquito panel under harsh light, a realization settled over him like ice. Even if Germany failed, the idea would survive. Wood beating steel was only the beginning. Someone else would learn this lesson. And next time, they wouldn't stop halfway. The final OSS operation launched in March 1945. A small team parachuted into Germany under moonless skies. Their mission was simple: erase the laboratory. Elias remained behind, staring at maps, listening to static-filled radio transmissions that carried fragments of chaos. The team breached the perimeter. Charges were placed. They were discovered. Gunfire, confusion, silence. Then the explosion. The laboratory vanished in fire and smoke. The research was gone. But one man was missing. Dr. Otto Klein. No body, no capture, no trial. Just absence. The war ended weeks later. Elias Warren left the service quietly in 1946. No medals, no interviews, no questions. Years passed. American aerospace researchers began developing ideas that seemed to appear from nowhere. Composite airframes, energy-dispersing bonds, designs that bent instead of broke. Elias recognized the ghost immediately. In lectures, long after the war, he would hold up a simple piece of wood. And say only this: strength is not what you think it is. The Mosquito never belonged to Britain, or Germany. Or America. It belonged to an idea. That speed could come from simplicity. That survival could come from humility. That the future might not be forged, but grown. German engineers learned it too late. America learned it just in time. and the world would spend decades catching up, because the most dangerous weapons of war are not bombs, planes, or armies. They are the moments when someone realizes the rules were wrong all along and decides to change them.